Hey YouTube, we are back with another Helldivers balance patch, and they've really shaken things up, especially in the Orbitals department. We're going to be going through and rearranging where we think things lie. It's been a couple days since the patch. I'm not saying that this is exactly where I'm going to stick them at maybe a month's time. Maybe that's for next month's tier list, but we've definitely noticed some changing of the of what we were using in our bugs tier 9 co-op tier lists. So let's get into it. Starting off with the Barrage, the Gatling Barrage to be specific. What a change. Firing, I think it was double the amount of rounds, 25% faster, and giving them heavy pen, similar to the Emancipator, where it's enough pen to actually get damage through the heavy armor, but not quite enough to do full damage. Totally fine, honestly. I love it. It's a fantastic stratagem at the moment, and I've been using it a ton in bug missions. My only downside is that Orbital Scatter really messes with it. It's one of those that if you have Orbital Scatter, I do not recommend bringing it, or else you're running the risk of that, like, it literally just is completely off target, right? I can definitely see situations where you can play around Orbital Scatter, where you can put it between you and the bug breach. So hopefully it kind of drifts a little bit, and then you can kind of reposition yourself in between the bug breach and where the Gatling Barrage actually lands. But I gotta say, it definitely messes with it a ton. And for that reason, I can't quite put it into S tier. We've been doing quite a bit of debating on, does it deserve to be an S tier? Like, is it like an S minus? I feel like I'm kind of sticking with it being an A+. It is a fantastic stratagem. It can kill Shrieker Nests, Spore Blooms. It can eventually kill a Bile Titan, weaken Chargers, kill everything you want it to, but it can get messed up, and it's not 100% accurate. Obviously, it's doing it in an area, and it does tend to kind of shift back and forth even a little bit when it's normal use, so keep that in mind. But it's really good. Absolutely love it. Airburst got a 20-second reduction in its overall call-in time from the base 120 seconds to 100 seconds. I want to say it's probably somewhere in like middle A. It's very strong. I love it as my ad clear stratagem that I throw at a bug breach or on a bug nest. Although it's not killing your higher tier targets, anything that is in that cone, especially on the bugs, minus maybe a charger, is going to die. It can in fact kill a charger, but it's more unlikely to, because the explosion needs to land closer to the butt of the charger to cause that death. 120 millimeter Barrage, I like it. I really do. But in a world where the 380 has the exact same cooldown, the 120 kind of has an identity crisis in that regard. I enjoy using it quite a bit. It's just now that we have these other orbitals that have a much shorter cooldown and honestly can do very similar things, I feel like I would much rather have that shorter cooldown or just more damage from like the 380. I still think the 120 is in a good spot. It would be in a much better spot if they took off 30 seconds on it, but it's in a good spot. I wouldn't blame someone for bringing it, throwing it a bug breach, and just seeing a lot of carnage from it. It's just, as barrages work, there's a little bit of RNG in them, and when you're saying that you need multiple strikes on a target to kill them because it's a 120, it kind of hurts it quite a bit, when I could just bring the 380, and if 380 fucking hits that thing, it's dying. 380, being said, I think is like an A- probable stratagem, somewhere in that range. I think it's a very solid pick for bugs, especially if you're positioning it well. Your team is in one sector. You can put it between you and the bug breach or on the bug breach. It's very effective for both ad clear, all the chargers, and even the Bile Titans, if you can get decently lucky with it falling correctly. Precision Orbital. I want to put an S-. And I feel like I'm pretty justified in saying this, in the fact that it is extremely useful now as a Bile Titan killer. It can kill the new chargers quite effectively too if you manage to either get them in staying in one spot or using a stun grenade. It's a fantastic alternative to the 500 kg. My only issue with it is that at this point you get the same kind of thing as the Gatling Barrage. Although the Gatling Barrage doesn't quite deserve to be an S tier because of the listed options, being a little more inaccurate and Orbital Scatter, I want to say that Orbital Precision, as long as you're willing to like stun the target and use it on those bigger tier enemies, I love it. I love using it. Just please make sure that Orbital Scatter is not on when you take it. It will make it feel terrible. So just be careful. And I understand that you might be like, well, why doesn't it also deserve to be an A? I just feel like it's even more useful than Gatling more consistently when there's no Orbital Scatter on. So that's why. Orbital EMS, I think, is a solid B pick. It's a good choice to, you know, throw on, especially for the new drill mission when you're defending it. Anything that walks into that EMS cloud is immediately stunned, minus Battle Titans. But unfortunately, I would rather something die than take this a lot of the time. It's useful if one person is willing to take it in a defend objective, or just like an, oh shit, there's lots of Battle Titans or chargers in front of me that I need to stun. But I would rather, in most situations, just, you know, bring like an Orbital Gas or an Eagle Airstrike, or honestly a lot of these barrages to actually take care of the enemy rather than just stunning them. Maybe if EMS had a shorter cooldown, I'd feel a little differently. Orbital Gas, I think, has seen a lot of usage lately, and I want to put it in like that A-, even though it kind of gets outclassed by other ad clear stratagems, and it sometimes struggles to be useful unless it's like lower tier enemies, or, you know, in a situation where there's nobody using an Incendiary Breaker. It's still really strong, but it sometimes gets outclassed by like things that outright kill, or just the Incendiary Breaker. The Incendiary Breaker can effectively do what the Gas Strike does and kill those enemies extremely effectively. In an environment where maybe no one's using it, this thing will absolutely mop up, killing tons of Scavengers, Hunters, Warriors, Brood Commanders, so on and so forth, or at least just weakening your higher tier enemies. It suffers from Orbital Scatter being very useless at times when you're throwing it at a bug breach and it just misses the bug breach. If I was going to see any change to this, I would love to see it either have a larger radius, then remove Orbital Scatter, or maybe even a lower cooldown on top of that. They've shown that they're even willing to reduce the cooldown of things like Gatling Barrage, so maybe Orbital Gas could get a little bit lower. I think some people may debate that maybe it's even lower into the B tier, but I think it deserves to be in A-. It's very strong, and it can combo with a lot of stratagems, especially like EMS Mortar or something like that. Completely, you know, wiping all the enemies off that are coming out at you. It's nice. Orbital Smoke, for bugs at least, I want to say is like more of like a C tier. I would love to see something that I think it was, I believe the YouTuber's name is Riker. He suggested having like more of like a circle around the actual position where you throw in the stratagem, so you can kind of throw it down at your feet, and then this curtain of smoke kind of comes in around you. I think that'd be really interesting. Hi, Luna. Yeah, you're back. Luna's now interrupted us. She wants lots of attention. I think Luna might have something to say about Gas Strike. What do you think? Okay. With Walking Barrage, it, I think, falls into a similar camp as the 120mm. I just wish it had a shorter cooldown or a greater level of accuracy. Like it was more of like a narrow column, of 380 shells. I've seen it too often be thrown at a Shrieker nest, and it lands before and after them, literally not destroying one piece of the Shrieker nest, which is a bit disappointing. It can definitely be very useful in those situations where like there's a bug breach happening quite far away and you see lots of enemies streaming towards you in a very narrow column. I can definitely see it being useful, but with a 4-minute cooldown and the chance of it missing outright being too high, I don't know if I can necessarily recommend. Orbital Laser, I'm going to put in like A- territory, somewhere in that range. I still think it is a useful orbital overall, but it is slowly going down as we keep getting more and more armored enemies on the field that are quite resistant to the laser. The laser is very bad against Battle Titans and Chargers. It just wastes too much time trying to go for them. But if you get into a situation where there's no Chargers and no Battle Titans, which doesn't happen very often, it can absolutely slay out on those enemies. But the laser can still be useful against those armored enemies. There just needs to be a little bit of cooperation and team play. Meaning you crack open the Charger or crack open the Battle Titan, so the laser actually has the opportunity to damage through the armor. For that reason, you know, I don't think it deserves to be any higher. It's a nice like fire and forget or like throw and forget, but it needs to be a little bit more useful as far as armor pen for me to want to put it any higher. At least it's really strong against Shrieker nests and like just general ad clear, but I would love to see it maybe do some more armor pen in the future against those targets. Orbital Railcannon, there's been a lot of debate with how this is going. You know, does it still deserve to be an S tier as like a really good option to deal with Chargers on the fly, or a Battle Titan and then mop up the Battle Titan afterwards? This might be a little bit of a controversial one, but I do think it falls into A tier now that Orbital Precision has been buffed so much. It is nice that Orbital Rail is still extremely useful when Orbital Scatter is on. You just, you know, throw it somewhat near the target and it will still track to the target. But the long cooldown, especially when compared to Orbital Precision, I just would rather bring Orbital Precision in those situations. Yes, you have to do a little bit more work to make Orbital Precision work. You know, matadoring that charger or matadoring that Bile Titan to stand still for that like couple seconds. But Orbital Precision being such a fast call-in now and having such a short cooldown is just so nice. And for that reason, I would actually recommend Orbital Precision as long as Orbital Scatter is not on. If Orbital Scatter gets on, then I would probably recommend Orbital Railcannon over that, even though you throw less of them. Okay. Going into Eagles, Strafing Run. What they did is very similar to Gatling Barrage. They gave it heavy pen, so just enough to be able to penetrate the target, but not enough to like penetrate with full damage. And for that reason, it's mostly softening up targets and not exactly outright killing many of your armored targets. I do like using it. It's a lot of fun, especially since they also gave it 1 extra charge before needing to be resupplied. I hope they give it a little more damage in the future, because I have trouble getting a lot of armored kills with it. And even when I'm using it on chaff, it is rare for you to get more than like just, you know, a dozen maybe kills. And when you're comparing that to the other Eagles that you could be using, like Eagle Airstrike or Eagle Cluster for the respected heavy targets for Eagle Airstrike, or chaff for Eagle Cluster, it's sometimes hard for you to justify wanting to go for that Eagle Strafing Run. I believe that Eagle Strafing Run is going to be like that A-, B+ territory. I haven't really nailed it down. I think I'm going to put it in B+ for now, and we might swap it by the end of the tier list. It needs a little bit more love as far as damage per strafing run, or maybe a little bit more concentrated fire for the heavier targets, or just maybe more splash damage so it can more reliably kill a line of chaff. Because I just see so often that a bunch of hunters will survive, or a bunch of warriors will survive a strafing run, and I'm just like, wait, what? I thought I threw that there. And yeah, at least it's really good against streakers and spore blooms pretty reliably, one strafing them, which is awesome. Really happy about that. Just a heads up, chat and me have been talking, you know, since we finished. Just want to make sure that people know that the strafing run, even after it's changed, it's a B+, A- stratagem. I could easily see it going into A depending on usage. It just sometimes lacks consistency against killing chargers, weakening Bile Titans, and just general ad clear. I would like to see it a little bit more consistent, especially from like an explosive component. When the pellet lands, you know, if it exploded a little bit more range, be more consistent ad clear, for instance. Eagle Airstrike very clearly still deserves to be an S tier. It is your go-to bread and butter. Like, you're just taking out heavy targets, chaff, everything in between, objectives, a bunch of uses on a short cooldown. It's quite easy to use. It just deserves to be an S tier. It is far too strong not to at this point in the game. Most people are bringing it on their bug missions, and it makes sense. I don't think I have to say anything more. Cluster Strike, I've definitely been seeing less people use it over time, including myself, especially with the new uses of the Gatling Barrage. I do think it still deserves to be an A+. If you need something that is chaff-oriented, it is insane. Spewer variants, chaff variants, or just like even with chargers, it can in fact do a ton of damage to chargers, especially if it's landing all around them. A lot of them will hit towards the butt, making it easier for you to burst it, and then they will bleed to death. So just the sheer amount of stuff that you can spam at a large bug breach, killing tons of enemies, is just too hard to ignore. It's just really good. Napalm is very solid pick for chaff as well. I think I would choose Napalm in some situations over Cluster, but it was most likely if nobody on the team is using Incendiary Breaker. As soon as someone on the team is using Incendiary Breaker, the power of Napalm does go down, and it's similar to Gas Strike in that position. When we are comparing both Napalm and Gas Strike, Napalm does in fact perform better because there's an initial explosion from the Napalm hitting the ground, and then there's damage over time afterwards in a larger area than Gas Strike. Also, Napalm has better uptime because you get 3 uses, then it goes on a 2-minute cooldown, versus Gas Strike, which is, you know, 1 use, and then it goes on a, I think it was 75-second cooldown, obviously the 10% on top of that, but overall, you will throw many more Napalm strikes over the course of a game than a Gas Strike. And you'll affect much more surface area because of that. Yes, I know there's cliffs that could be in the way of the Napalm, but regularly, this doesn't actually play that much of a problem in game, especially if you're kind of keeping that on the back of your head. You can throw them a little bit differently. Eagle Smoke being a little bit better than Orbital Smoke in this context. I just feel like the only times I've ever really used it was the Meridia drill protection, which is kind of useful, but I'm going to say the normal kind of thing where I just would rather them die rather than conceal. It can be useful to some teams. They want to play stealthier, or if they feel like patrols are constantly spotting them and chasing after them, this could be something some means of a tactic of, you know, being more stealthy without the team needing to maybe all wear stealth armor and so on and so forth. I think it deserves to be in C tier. Just stealth typically just doesn't happen in 4-player co-op. 110mm rocket pods is an interesting one. They recently just buffed it. I don't think it quite deserves to go into S tier or anything around there, but I love its consistency now. The amount of damage it can do to help you in your bug missions is awesome. It sucks that it lost some damage along the way, so it's definitely something that you would use to soften up a target. Very much along the lines of like Orbital Railgun. You need to use it a little bit more effectively than Orbital Railgun, so throwing it close to a target, and then hopefully it lands and breaks open. There are quite a few situations where it won't crack open a Bile Titan, or maybe it'll hit the bad side of a charger, not doing that much damage, maybe not cracking it open, but at least it's weakening. It is fun to use, and I do like pairing it with weapons that are maybe weakening the head, like a railgun, or something that maybe is like an explosive weapon like the autocannon, just to crack open the side of a Bile Titan, so then you can shoot inside. If I was going to see any change, just, you know, giving it maybe one extra salvo, or giving it some more damage, or maybe an extra use, would definitely like elevate it into that S tier if they were going to do anything. By no surprise, 500 kg deserves to be right up there in S tier. It is just your bread and butter. I need to deal with a Bile Titan. With a little bit of practice, it is extremely good. I like to show on stream this kind of like graph, this graph that goes upwards, and basically, like when you first unlock it, you don't think it's very powerful, and you're like, why does it have such a big effect? But it doesn't really do anything because you're expecting it to be more horizontal damage. And, you know, as you get used to it, you get to this midpoint where you start to realize, oh my God, there's like a vertical climb on it, and that's why it's so good versus Bile Titans. And then you learn how to Matador, and the amount of kills you will get with it, especially Bile Titans, goes up exponentially. When you start to learn how to keep a Bile Titan in place and keep them either spitting at you or constantly rotating around them, so they're just constantly rotating, so the 500 kg has time to land, you just get so many more Bile Titan kills than any other stratagem on this list. It is so good for it. And having 2 uses on 2-minute cooldown does make it so you can have more uses than the Orbital Precision, and it doesn't get affected by Orbital Scatter, which just makes it a better Bile Titan killer. Okay, going into the emplacements and the sentries. The emplacement just got a rather nice buff. I just want to put it middle B tier. It is extremely fun to use. It got a 100% rotation speed increase. So it makes it so like enemies that are coming off from your flanks are definitely not nearly as much of a threat as they were before. I do enjoy using it. Just, I think we need to keep in mind that it is competing against other sentries that don't require you to aim it. So it means that you're not using your support weapon. You're not using your primary weapon while you're on this thing. So you got to make it really work for you. It is awesome on some blitz missions when you just pop it down in the middle of the map and just shoot shrieker nests all the way around you. It's a really good shrieker nest killer, by the way, because it does medium plus pen. If I was going to say anything, maybe just a little more ammo or a little more firepower per shot to make it a little bit less necessary to want to bring another stratagem, make it a little more worthwhile to use. Like, it would be crazy if it had some amount of heavy pen, but maybe too overpowered because you'd just be eliminating everything, but maybe not. I don't know. Discuss it down in the comments. I wonder what you think. Shield generator, I think, is a C tier. I do see the usage of like getting a Bile Titan to spit into it and kill themselves, or a situation where like a charger, if you don't know, will like slam into it and stun themselves. So it makes the flamethrower kind of useful. Unfortunately, outside of that and like tanking some bile spear shots, I would just rather bring another stratagem personally. It's very niche. I'm sure you can make a build where it's very useful, or maybe develop tactics where it is very useful for you, or defend maybe the new drill with it. But a lot of times in those drill situations, you can get pushed out of the bubble, and then now they are protected by the bubble, which is kind of funny. Unfortunately, Tesla Tower hasn't really moved. I still think it's like a B something stratagem. It just gets killed by charges too often. And as long as you're not, you need to basically like protect Tesla from charges and Bile Titans, or else it gets very little usage. Unless you can find this excellent rock to put it on, and maybe it's protected by chargers. But hey, Bile Titans can still spawn and mess with it, and that is not good. So yeah, if it was going to have anything, I just wish it could survive maybe one charger headbutt, and then maybe the charger stands up and then hits it, because at least in that amount of time, maybe you could kill the charger, disable them, or just like maybe the Tesla Tower could kill him with enough shocks. I don't know. It needs a little bit more survivability versus the higher tier bugs. All right, looking at... Oh, sorry. We have a cat who's requiring belly rubs. Oh, Luna. Luna, we got to do a tier list. We got to do a tier list. All right, going into the next one, we have the mines. They recently got a damage bonus, both of them. I think it was like 50 extra damage on both per explosion. Sounds great on paper, but I believe there's a problem. I took them, and I noticed chain explosions happening. If you shoot one mine that landed too close to another mine, it will cause a chain reaction across multiple mines, and they will just keep exploding. And this happens quite often, and it might have something to do with the extra damage. I was told that this was happening beforehand as well. I just gotta say, man, the value of the mines goes way down when that happens, because, you know, more than half your minefield can blow up just because one mine got activated, either because of a stray bullet or a stratagem hit it. I just can't get behind using the minefields at the moment. I still think that both mines need a buff, and it's not necessarily just more damage. It's more like a rework, either making them throw them out farther so that they're not like chain exploding, or making them easier to spot. I do like the small change where like you can now ping the mines and you'll see like a red icon rather than the normal like white icon, so it makes it a little more clear. But like the mines on the ground so often just are not visible, either because of deep snow or sand or whatever. I feel like it needs more love, especially if we get AT mines. AT mines are just going to be elevated past them. AT mines might not be like A tier or something. They might be E tier, but they'll still leave these mines in the dust. Lower cooldown, maybe like wider throw so they don't chain explode. Stuff like that, I feel like will really help it. I want to say that they probably have enough damage at this point. They just need more of a rework in other aspects. Such as, I gotta say, I love this little thing. I to the point where I think it's like a B+ stratagem. The fact that, if you guys don't know, they kept the damage and they kept the ammo count the same, but it got a 1 minute reduction in cooldown. I love throwing this thing down on my flank or like off to the side of a bug breach and just watching it slay. It's awesome. I really enjoy it. In many respects, it's like the baby Gatling, and I do see it on par with the Gatling. It's just used in a different playstyle. If you're more aggressive and you just want something to just throw out while you're attacking something, or like a bug breach happens, you throw it on off angle, it's really useful for that. Whereas the Gatling, you know, I'm putting it basically right next to it. They're on par with one another. The Gatling, I think, is more of like a defensive stratagem. You don't want it turning on wide sweeps because it wastes so much ammo swapping targets. You kind of want it to be laying down fire in a defensive position towards a target. It has a longer cooldown, and it more or less just works better in those environments. They both have the same damage profile and the same like armor pen and stuff. You just will use one in a different environment, and just give it a try. Give the small machine gun a try. Since patch, it's incredibly fun at bug missions, especially if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed by like hunters and stuff. It's very ammo efficient because it doesn't waste a lot of ammo swapping targets, and it's very accurate. It's just good repositioning too. It swaps targets really fast. I have nothing but good things to say about it. I gotta say, good things. Mortars, I think, are middle B. In defensive situations, it can be very good, especially if everybody on the team brings them, you know, for those defensive silo missions. Great, especially if you have like EMS, mortar, and the normal mortar. Just with pure numbers, it can outperform a lot of stratagems and turrets. It's great, but in the vast majority of bug scenarios, you're more likely to kill your teammates than actually have a positive impact on the battle. Bugs get close to your teammates, and your teammates might not realize that the mortar is coming in. Unless you have a very defensive team that's willing to communicate whenever the mortar is firing or being used, in normal quick play, this thing is just going to get you and your teammates losing your revives. I can't recommend it. It can spawn camp a bug breach. It can, but it also can absolutely spawn camp your teammates. So for that reason, I cannot highly recommend it. Going to next, I want to say the Autocannon. Great stratagem to use, really solid, middle A, high DPS, high stagger, does great against chaff and lots like assortment of like heavy pen targets such as Battle Titans and Chargers, even Behemoth Chargers. Even though it takes a little bit longer for them to kill now, it will be staggering them at least. Really strong. It's basically the high DPS cousin of the new buffed Rocket Sentry, and I think the Rocket Sentry, I believe it deserves to be right next to it, maybe even a little bit higher because of the sustained fire. If you can find a good position for the Rocket Sentry, it will fire for much longer at a consistent rate against heavy targets and chaff targets, because they gave it explosive radius, so it has some ad clear, and it doesn't really overkill chaff nearly as much as the autocannon, because if you don't know, the autocannon always does a doof, 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 3 rounds. The rocket will shoot 1 round, and then it flies quite fast and could possibly kill that target and then swap targets. So it can be very ammo efficient in that regard, while also having basically the double amount of the fire time. I've had several situations where, you know, I throw down this rocket sentry in a good position. It fires off at a bunch of patrols. Maybe sits idle for like 30 seconds, but then just keeps going, right? It has more than enough ammo to almost be useful for another full cycle. So like 3 minutes will go by and you'll have another one, and you're just, this one's just running out of ammo or just such, right? It's really strong for that. I can't wait to use it on a defense mission. We haven't yet had a defensive planet for bugs, but I gotta say, I bet the rocket sentry is gonna do really well on it. EMS Mortar, I think, is also like going to be in that like A tier, especially since we're getting a lot of defensive missions as of late. Highly recommend bringing it in conjunction with basically everything. If you can just stand by it, it will be that better version of the EMS Strike, stun locking the vast majority of enemies, keeping chargers still, just slowing down the battle when it's getting very chaotic, right? Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. It's fantastic. It's not just a bot weapon. It's really good for bugs as well. All right, going into the backpacks. Starting off with the jetpack, middle B. It's a little bit of a niche weapon or a niche stratagem. I can see its usage. It can be very useful in the context of like maybe a map that doesn't have a lot of access due to water features, or maybe there's a lot of cliffs. You can get high ground. It's awesome for that, or just evading, like encircling enemies. You can jump right over them. I can see that usage. Problem is that it's just not as good as the Meridia dark matter jetpack. I love that thing, and I wish it was more like this. Shorter cooldown, more elevation. I would definitely use the jetpack more. As far as fun factor, it would be S tier, but as far as usefulness overall in a mission, it struggles against its contemporaries, especially when you're talking about a lot of backpack weapons are quite good. Going into the Ballistic Guard Dog, I still think this thing needs a buff. It technically did get a buff. If you didn't see that, all ARs or small caliber weapons are doing more durable damage now, meaning they can break heads and arms and legs, so on and so forth, better and faster. So it did receive a buff, but I don't think it's nearly enough to make it entirely useful. I want to see it be the medium pen version of the Laser Rover. So that means larger magazine, medium pen, and possibly make it a little bit more ammo efficient. I just notice it overkilling enemies sometimes. Like, it'll kill a scavenger, but then sometimes it'll keep shooting at its body. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I've seen it in quite a few situations where I'm testing it out. I wish it could just be like one tapping a bunch of scavengers and then just move on to the bigger target, right? Rather than doing these long controlled bursts on a scavenger, which it's like, it doesn't need to. I don't know why it's doing that sometimes. It's very weird. I'm not sure. Going into the next one, we have the Spy Backpack. Love the Spy Backpack. It's just great. It's a solid stratagem. Honestly, I could easily see people arguing that it should go into A, but just solid. You don't necessarily need it for a team running around, but it's incredibly useful for more stims and ammo. It's a good pairing for if you want to just like flamethrower everything and always have another stim to put in your neck. If you want to be that like medic class, it's really good for that. Just solid stratagem. Doesn't really need to change. It's just good. Just good. Ballistic Shield. It's pretty much useless. It does work against Bile Spewers and technically Bile Titans, sort of. There's an explosive component to Bile Titan Spit, so the damage technically goes around it. Also, the shield can break quite easily to the Spit. It needs to work against melee attacks. Until it does, I don't think I can put it any higher. If it could block or like stun or parry a melee attack that's coming, like a picture of a hunter jumping on you and then you can block it, it would be far better. But until then, I can't recommend it. Laser Rover, I think still deserves to be like a middle A. It's a great pick for someone who's bringing maybe like a Jar Dominator and doesn't have a sidearm because maybe they're bringing the grenade pistol. It's a fantastic option for just dealing with chaff. It's great at dealing with scavengers, so you don't have to waste ammo on them. Great at dealing with hunters. Great at dealing with like even nursing spewers and warriors. It's just extra damage that you don't have to worry about. And because it lost its damage, it doesn't Keem kill nearly as much. So yes, it lost a bunch of damage recently with the patch like last month, but hey, it also means that it's not killing you and your teammates nearly as fast, so you have more time to react. So, backpack, the shield backpack, middle A, is a really solid option for those that are dipping their toes into Helldive and are still struggling against spewers, chargers, and just getting annoyed by hunters, even though the slow has been nerfed. I'm sure there's people debating me in the comments saying that it probably deserves to be lower, especially since less people use it. But for a general guide, I think it's fantastic for people that are getting into Helldive difficulty. As you get used to the difficulty and you get better at dodging, you know, this and that, you won't need it. And it turns into more of a crutch rather than helping you, because you probably don't need it against Bile Spear because you're getting better at dodging them, or you don't need it against a charger because you've learned that you can run around them as they're charging at you, stuff like that. Both mechs are an interesting one. I want to put them A-, but I think I'm going to end up putting them B+ together. And I think until they add the vehicle bay, which probably will give them either a shorter cooldown or more ammo and stuff like that, I think they're probably just going to sit in the B+ territory. They're very powerful in the right hands for someone that's playing them more as a support weapon rather than one-man army. If you're running off by yourself in these mechs and trying to take on the entire Terminated horde, you're going to feel like they're sometimes weak and they're not enough ammo. But if you're using them as a support weapon, where you're like using it with the Emancipator, for instance, and you soften up the Bile Titan's head with like maybe 4 shots, it only takes 1 more AT shot to kill the Bile Titan if he was untouched. It's a great combo weapon because of that. Same thing goes for the Emancipator with dealing with a charger leg, right? The new behemoths take 2 AT shots to take out the head or the leg. You can soften up that head so it's only 1. Right? So when we look at it in context like that, I think they're a lot better than people lead onto them, especially now that the arms are far more accurate. That was kind of a change that they made. They gave a lot more leniency to where the arms are pointed. So when you point your crosshair at a Bile Titan's head with a rocket mech now, it actually basically lands there unless you're in extreme close range. Highly recommend trying them out, especially if you didn't like how accurate they were before. They still have the problem of not enough ammo, but they are very powerful. And in the right hands, I think they're easily an A tier. But I think for the vast majority of people, trying them out or just like kind of getting used to them, probably B+. All right, going into these support weapons, we're going to start off with the MG43. If you guys didn't see, it got a 0.5 second faster reload, and it benefits from the small caliber durable damage, and it got 1 extra mag in reserve, which is nice. Still, I believe it is like a middle B. It's great. It's great. But there's a lot of primary weapons that will compete against it, and it's not that much better than those primary weapons. It's very fun to use, but I'll be honest, I think I would rather just bring like the Gatling Sentry and then bring some other type of support weapon. It's solid, it's strong, but I'm not going to be bringing it over like an AT weapon or a Flamethrower or something like that. These other support weapons that just kind of fit a niche really well and can do what these MG43 can do, while also having a primer that can kind of do with it. So what I would do is maybe like a Dominator plus a like Flamethrower build, something like that. So you have like the medium pen of the Dominator and the Flamethrower for like chargers and stuff like that. And then maybe you bring like an EAT or a 500 kg for your Bile Titans. You know, well-rounded in that respect. The MG43, kind of just doing what a primary does, just better. AMR, I want to put in like somewhere closer to the B- territory. It's very effective versus Bile Spears, but you can't guarantee that there's going to be Bile Spears on your map. And until you can, I can't put it any higher. If they make Bile Spears a modifier, it immediately goes higher, just because you can take this and it's really effective versus them because you can one-tap them in the head. It takes around 6 shots to blow up a butt of a charger. It's quite ineffective versus a Bile Titan, basically just blowing up the stomach, but even a primary can do that really effectively. AMR just has trouble dealing with a lot of things. It's nice that it can one-tap Brood Commander, but let's be honest, a Railgun can do that. Why would you take the AMR when other support weapons can do what it does very effectively similarly? Still good, just, hey, Arrowhead, give me Bile Spears as a modifier on a mission, so I know they're going to be there. Then I would use the AMR way more. Stalwart, I think, still has a little bit of identity crisis, even though it benefited from the small carbine buff with durable parts. I want to see it either become a primary or it gets something else. I don't know what else it needs, or they just leave it the way it is and it's just going to be a better primary. The light pen definitely doesn't always feel great depending on the type of mission. Like I was saying earlier, if you manage to get unlucky and you get a version with Bile Spewers, the Stalwart feels terrible. Like it really does, because the vast majority of enemies you're going to be dealing with are going to be Bile Spewers, and light pen weapons just can't really do much against Bile Spewers. Going to next, we have the EAT. The EAT is a solid A tier anti-tank weapon. It pairs well with so many support weapons. If you are someone that wanted to bring the MG43, you can just use that alongside the EAT, and it just works so damn well. It's an awesome pairing support weapon. You know, you're not going to bring it as your main AT weapon, right? Your main support weapon, but it's awesome to just bring alongside. You know, whenever you're getting to a new POI or a new objective, you just throw it down just in case you need it. You know, every minute, just throw it down. It's great for that. I don't think anything more needs to be said other than if you're using it against a Behemoth Charger, because I haven't said it yet, Behemoth Charger's rear legs have less durable damage needed to break the armor. It's about 50 less, which means 1 AT shot to break the rear armor on those legs. So 1 EAT, then just primary down that leg, really strong, okay? I wouldn't necessarily recommend using the AT weapons versus the head or the front legs for that reason. So keep that in mind. Recoilless, even though it got like kind of a stealth nerf in the most recent patch, they slowed down the reload back to the original reload basically like a month and a half ago. They've already come out and said that that was unintentional. I'm putting this here assuming that they are going to revert it back to the way it was, and it was perfectly fine. I really like the recoilless in that situation. You know, a lot of times I like go for a reload, just pull out the shell, reposition, maybe kill a couple bugs, then go for the final amount of the reload, especially since you can animation cancel. As soon as in the bottom left corner you see the shell kind of light up white, you can press your crouch key, stand up, you finish the reload immediately, you can fire it. So you can shave off almost a second on the reload speed, which is awesome. Going to the next one, Flamethrower. And you might be like, why the hell are you putting Flamethrower in A tier? It's only gotten better since Behemoth Chargers have been added. It is fantastic versus Behemoth Chargers. And you might be like, why? The flame of the Flamethrower goes through the leg armor. You might already know that. But the leg armor is null and voided, right? But the leg underneath has the same health, I believe, and I believe the people that can back me up in the comments, it has the same TTK as a normal charger. There's no difference. So if you are already slaying normal chargers, you can slay the Behemoth Charger just as well. Bring some stun grenades, and you are the person that is dealing with those Behemoth Chargers, freeing up the AT shots for Baltines when they spawn. Highly recommend. Flamethrower is also great at chaff. Just try to prevent yourself from using the Flamethrower on enemies too close because there's splashback. Also, try not to walk forward while using the Flamethrower. Walk backwards so you're not walking into your own flames, and you will set yourself on fire far less. Try it out. It's fantastic. You will be the bane of the existence of Behemoth Chargers. Highly recommend. Another A tier stratagem is going to be your Autocannon. You know, it's just fantastic. It's a really good option. It is also very good against Behemoth Chargers. As I said earlier, the Behemoth Charger has the same butt health. So, you know, if you were like 3 to 5 shotting their butts before on the normal charger, you're going to do that here as well. It's quite effective. Obviously, you're still taking care of brood commanders and shrieker nests at range. It's just a solid bug weapon. You know, when they say it's the pinnacle of balance for bugs, I would agree. It has a lot of strengths, some weaknesses, such as against Battle Titans, but still effective. If someone can crack open the shoulder or the back of a Battle Titan, you're the guy to shoot in there. It is awesome for it. HMG got changed. It got some more damage. It got a faster reload speed. It got some more stagger, but it still has a very small magazine, and fitting in that reload is pretty tough at times in bug missions. And the nature of how slow it is makes me want to put it even lower than the MG43. Although it's quite good against spore blooms and shrieker nests now, because it has that extra, I think it's like 50% more damage, it still suffers against like general ad clear and like having an identity outside of just shooting ball spewers. I do hope that maybe it gets better handling in the future, or the armor that gives you better handling that came out with the recent Warbond, actually we see a benefit from it, right? If it like gave it like 50% better handling or something crazy like that, oh my god, you know, immediately going to A- or something like that. But until then, there's too many downsides of the HM43 in bugs. Love it to death, and it's easily A tier in bots, but for bugs, it has an identity crisis. All right, going into another one that some people might find a little controversial. I think it deserves to be right next to its other Patriots up here, is the Railgun. It's a good combo weapon and good against the new Chargers and Chargers in general. If you guys haven't used it since they've changed it, it's 2 unsafe Railgun shots to the leg of a regular Charger, 3 unsafe Railgun shots to a Behemoth Charger leg to break it, 2 to the back, 80 90s, 70 plus 3 for the front of a Ball Titan, or a Behemoth Charger. Don't recommend shooting the head of the Behemoth Chargers. It goes up to like 6 shots, not worth it, but it's really good for legging them. Also really strong against Bile Titans. At the moment, it's like 1 to 2 unsafe railgun shots, then 1 anti-tank shot to destroy a Bile Titan. If you guys don't know, they reduce the overall durable damage needed to kill the Bile Titan's head. So you're in a situation where the railgun is actually a really good combo weapon, while also being really good at just general ad clear versus chargers, bile spewers, because it one taps them in the head, brood commanders, one taps them in the head. And in an emergency situation, it can in fact deal with like a shrieker nest across the map. If you charge it high enough, it does do some amount of durable damage to them. Don't necessarily recommend it, but it can do it. So highly recommend trying out the railgun. It is basically back to the way it was at launch. In many respects, you just have to use unsafe railgun, unsafe mode. Okay, give it a try. You might like it. Grenade launcher recently saw a buff of 50 damage. It's noticeable. It's nice. I am putting it on purpose next to the supply backpack though. The problem with the grenade launcher is that it has really bad ammo reserves, and it doesn't get resupplied super effectively off ground. You only get 1 additional magazine per like the ground loot. So you run into a situation where you're just kind of like always scavenging for ammo, or you're just like not really using it, or you're taking a second stratagem to make it have enough ammo. If they just gave it like 1 to 2 extra magazines in reserve, I think this thing would have an absolute place as like a great ad tier stratagem. But until that happens, I just can't. I can't put it any higher. I don't think it necessarily deserves to be higher until that happens. It just depends on ammo way too much. Laser cannon, I'm gonna say is like B+. It's okay in a lot of situations. I do like it for dealing with like shrieker nests sometimes, or dealing with like bile spewers or something like along those lines, but it just lacks stopping power, and you're not going to use it for general ad clear because it actually doesn't do that much damage consistently, and it overheats. So certain planets, you're just going to feel like you're just constantly not able to use it because it's just overheating in your pocket. It's not great against the new chargers at all, unless you're taking advantage of the charger bug where the armor is desyncing. I can't necessarily recommend it for that reason. Unfortunately, going into the next one, the Arc Thrower. I think the Arc Thrower is definitely starting to slip in my tier list, mostly because its usage is going down. I'm seeing that. And also they haven't addressed the issues of the weapon. And I think it deserves getting at least the fire rate or the range increase back to it that it lost a couple months ago. Give it 1. It doesn't need both, but it needs 1, right? It needs to either fire faster because the blitzer kind of just is more immediate and does more damage. And I feel like more people are just willing to use the blitzer, or give it more range so you have more time to deal with that charger before it gets to you, or you have more range to, you know, hit the head of the Bile Titan, because if you're too close, it'll hit the belly. The farther you are from the Bile Titan, the easier it is to actually impact the head, helping your teammates kill Bile Titans faster. So I just hope it gets something to make me want to put it up into that recommended A tier. Quasar, I still think, is the best AT weapon in the game. Yes, it's not as powerful against the Behemoth charger, but with the knowledge of wait for the charger to pass you, then aim at the back leg. You're going to leg the charger, taking away the armor, then just swap to your primary. It's auto-reloading, has unlimited ammo. It's so freaking good. Yes, they now made it so hot and cold planets affect the overall like usage of the weapon, but it's only 2.5 seconds, and you get a benefit on cold planets. So there's that. The spear, alongside the other recommended support weapons, it's fantastic. I love it versus Bile Titans. If you get better at dealing with Bile Titans as far as like getting that one-shot potential and learning the lineup, it's a Bile Titan slayer. Just you got to get used to it, and you got to learn how to do it. But the tracking on it works fantastic now, and it doesn't obviously have the problem where it doesn't track fabricators because it's a bug mission. It does still have a little bit of trouble tracking onto like spore blooms across the map or shrieker nests sometimes, but you know, if you need to, you can use it for those things. Yeah, give it a try. Since the patch, it's awesome. It will be only better when they fix the superior packaging, which unfortunately they broke in the most recent patch. So, and Airburst, it could be C tier, but I think it just needs a buff. I think it needs to do more damage, less potential to team kill, and maybe make the explosive radius, like the explosions, do armor pen. So you actually want to use it against a wider variety of enemies, because at the moment, you're only really using it against chaff, but it's like, why wouldn't you just bring the grenade launcher in that situation? You have to bring a backpack anyways, so like, I would just rather use the grenade launcher, or I'd rather use basically anything else at this point. Whenever a teammate uses it, I stay like 20 meters away from them at all times because I don't want to die to it. And yes, every once in a while they'll get a very satisfying shot off where like it blows up and they'll maybe get 20 kills, but then they're spending 10 seconds, it feels like, trying to reload it. And you'll be like, Maple, it's not a 10-second reload. but they're going to get interrupted while they're trying to reload it most of the time. And if you guys don't know, it doesn't have a staged reload, meaning that if you get interrupted, you have to start all over again. So it's really hard to use in a bug mission, which you're going to get interrupted while reloading. You're not going to always be in that optimal position where you're not going to get interrupted and you can just continuously fire it off. It just doesn't work like that. Anyways, now that we're looking at the end of the tier list, if there's anything I want to swap, it would probably be like maybe gas down to B+, maybe moving napalm down a little bit. Is there anything else I want to move looking over it? Probably not. I think I'm pretty happy with this. Just do bear in mind, I know there's going to be a comment section of like, how streamer, you're so dumb. I use this and it's really good in this situation and I really want you to use it in this. I think it deserves to be an A or it deserves to be an S. I totally get it. People use stratagems in different ways. This is how I recommend using stratagems. This is how I see other players use stratagems. You got to remember, I do 90% of my playtime just hitting the R quick play button and just going into a mission and seeing how people are using things, seeing how I use things, and then discussing things with my chat. I feel like I've taken a pretty like effective, like, or as good of a take on these stratagems as possible. But obviously any stratagem on this list, you can move up or down at least one tier, depending on how you use it. Maybe you're a god in a mech, put that thing higher, right? Maybe you use the gas strike better and you're able to predict the orbital scattering better than I can, put it higher, right? Totally get it. This is just my take, trying to help out new players trying to get into the Hell Dive difficulty. Hope it was useful. Do consider dropping a like on the stream, or sorry, not on the stream, on the video, and coming by the stream, dropping a follow. Comment down below what you guys think of the tier list. Discuss it with me, discuss it with other Helldivers. I'd be curious to know what other people think on this, because when you guys give me your feedback, it helps me maybe adjust and look at different stratagems in different light, right? A good example of that was before this, I definitely did not value the Stalwart nearly as much as I do now. I totally get it. I get how people are using it, and especially with like comboing with like the grenade pistol or other stratagems to use it in conjunction to like deal with like the Bile Titan or the Charger that, you know, they can't really deal with. It's great for that, and I get it. So hope you guys understand. Have a great day. Have fun hell diving, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.